Oh my. The whole house feels gloomy because someone stays in bed all day. You can't even take care of yourself, let alone help around the house. Honestly, you're such an eyesore.
How long do you plan to just lie there?
My mother-in-law and sister-in-law complain like this every time they see me. My father-in-law adds,
Surely, having a daughter-in-law who does nothing is no better than having no one at all. What's the point of even getting married?
My name is Rachel Michaels, and I'm 32. I've been married for 5 years. My dad passed away from an illness when I was in high school, and my mom did shortly after I got married. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved drawing and dreamed of becoming a picture book author. After high school, I went to design school and got a job as an illustrator at a small design firm. I met my husband Dustin when he came to my company. He was looking for illustrations for an ad campaign, as he worked at an advertising agency. We dated for 2 years before getting married. At the time, my sister-in-law Mandy was still living at home, but Dustin and I decided to live with his family after the wedding. To accommodate my work, I transitioned to freelancing and started working from home. I wanted to be a good wife, so I put a lot of effort into household chores. My mother-in-law named Lucy didn't seem to enjoy housework, so she told me I could do things however I liked, which made everything easier. Mandy was indifferent to housework as well, often out drinking or dining with friends or coworkers, so we rarely ate together. We all got along fine. However, 3 years ago, everything changed when I fell down a staircase at a shopping center and suffered a severe injury. My life changed completely. The accident left me with a spinal cord injury and permanent paralysis in my lower body. That was devastating at first, but 3 years had passed, and I had slowly adjusted to that new way of life. At the beginning, my in-laws were supportive and caring. Nevertheless, as time went on, their attitudes shifted because it became clear that I wouldn't ever walk again. During that time, Mandy got married and moved out 2 years ago.
Well, at least, I don't have to see Rachel lying around all the time anymore,
She said before leaving. It was painfully obvious that my in-laws saw me as a burden. Indeed, it must be inconvenient to have someone bedridden at home, so I couldn't bring myself to argue back when they made snide remarks. The house we lived in was old and not wheelchair accessible. Since I couldn't move around without one, I was mostly confined to my bed. Luckily, I had been able to continue working from home since my job didn't require physical mobility. Having no paralysis in my upper body was a small blessing. At that time, the people helping me were a home helper and a housekeeper who came in to take care of my personal needs. However, the helper was only allowed to provide personal care assistance. Dustin was busy with work and couldn't help much. For the first 2 years, my in-laws occasionally helped out, but they eventually stopped doing that. I easily understood that Lucy, who never liked housework to begin with, wouldn't want to do extra chores for me. Dustin was also considerate for me at first, but hardly spoke to me anymore and didn't help with anything.
I've got work, and household chores aren't what a man should do,
He said dismissively. Even though my in-laws wouldn't help, the helper couldn't provide household assistance due to the regulations. Thankfully, the helper noticed my family's lack of support and recommended a housekeeper to help.
A housekeeper? What a waste of money. You're so spoiled.
As you see, I need someone to help me, because I can't even do my own laundry and I sometimes need personal items, too.
Oh, so you're expecting a housekeeper to do that?
Given my condition, I have no choice but to rely on a housekeeper.
My in-laws looked at me like I was some kind of plague.
You're such a curse on this family. We don't have money to waste on something like that.
I'll cover the cost myself.
I was so grateful I could still work and support myself. Eventually, I managed to hire one. The housekeeper's name was Mary, a 52-year-old woman. Her husband passed away a long time ago, and she didn't have any children. For some reason, she reminded me of my late mom. Mary was incredibly kind and genuinely cared about me, and I was so grateful to have her. In those days, the only people I could talk to were Mary and my home helper, not my family. When Mary started coming to the house, my in-laws immediately tried to boss her around.
Hey, you can handle our laundry and cleaning too, right?
I'm afraid I can't.
What did you say? Aren't you a housekeeper? What are you even here for?
If you'd like me to handle your chores, it'll require an additional fee. Would you like to cover that?
What on earth is this? How dare you talk back, you arrogant housekeeper?
While they argued, Mary stood her ground, and I couldn't help but feel a little satisfied. That arrangement continued for about a year. Then, one day, my sister-in-law Mandy returned home after divorcing her husband. She claimed the divorce was due to her husband's infidelity.
That guy is such an idiot. He probably got seduced by some woman. He was such a nagging control freak anyway.
She complained. Though, he was working for a major corporation and seemed like a very serious and dependable guy. I couldn't imagine him cheating. Even so, I kept my thoughts to myself, not wanting to stir up trouble.
Wow, having a housekeeper is amazing. Obviously, she'll help me out too, right?
Mandy said, echoing my in-laws' sentiments, but Mary firmly shut that down as well. Mary didn't think highly of my in-laws, who never once spoke a kind word to me even though they lived with me.
No, I will not.
Huh. Then why are you even here?
I'm here to take care of Rachel.
What's that supposed to mean?
Then, Lucy joined in.
This housekeeper here is as useless as Rachel. Must be because Rachel is too cheap to hire decent help. This cannot be helped since she probably doesn't earn much with her little hobby work.
Yeah, Rachel is a failure of a woman who can't even take care of herself.
That's exactly why I need a housekeeper. You two can both take care of yourselves, so you don't need one, right?
I retorted, which shut them up, but Mandy's return only doubled the snide comments from my in-laws.
A bedridden daughter-in-law is nothing but a burden. Now that Mandy's back, you're just taking up space in this house. We don't need you here.
You're living such a cushy life, lying in bed and doodling all day.
Even while I was working, Mandy would go out of her way to come into my room just to make sarcastic remarks. Day after day, the constant stream of sarcastic remarks wore me down, so I decided to talk to Dustin about that.
Can you tell your mom and Mandy to watch what they say, even just a little? It's really hurtful.
Well, they're just telling the truth, aren't they?
Truth? What do you mean?
You can't do housework and instead spend all day in bed.
I'm not just lying around. You see, I'm working.
From bed only, right? It's an easy job. You don't have to deal with commuting like I do.
True, but I'm trying my best to contribute in any way I can.
Well, the fact is, we have you as my wife in this house, who can't do anything. I can easily imagine that Mom and Mandy are frustrated. It's only natural they see you as useless.
Do they really feel like that?
Anyway, don't get so worked up about it. Just ignore them. If you let it get to you, you'll drive yourself crazy.
His response felt completely detached, like he didn't care at all. I already felt the weight of my disability every day, and the fact that he didn't seem to care about my feelings made me quite uneasy. If only I were healthy. If only I could walk. If only I could move like everyone else. I thought about those things constantly. That made me feel extremely painful and sad, and I just wanted Dustin to understand that, at least. Was that too selfish of me? Even when I told myself not to cry, the tears came anyway. After the accident, I had resolved to stay strong and keep moving forward, even with a body like this. I kept telling myself that I wouldn't let it win, especially knowing there were countless people dealing with way harder situations. Still, I couldn't help but feel lonely without my parents to rely on. At the same time, I was glad they didn't have to see me like that. Despite that, I didn't have a single ally in that house, which made me feel utterly miserable. Even so, I didn't have anywhere to return to anymore. At the very least, I wondered if I could leave that house with Dustin. While I was contemplating that, he hit me with some shocking words.
I've been thinking about what Mom and the others have been saying.
For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope, thinking he had considered my situation. However, his next words shattered that hope.
I think they're right, after all.
They are right?
I mean, in place of you, I should find a younger and healthier wife.
Excuse me?
You know, I'd like to have kids someday. But, with you, well, that's just not going to happen.
It felt like someone had hit me over the head with a bat. I couldn't believe none other than my husband would say something so cruel. That made me realize that I couldn't expect anything from him anymore. Dustin kept talking, but I didn't register any of that. I just understood that he wanted a divorce.
Rachel, you're completely useless, like a bulky trash. Sure, you're paying for the housekeeper, but with what little you earn, I bet you barely have anything left after that.
You're just a burden on this family, like a parasite sucking the life out of us.
Exactly. Even the helper isn't free, you know.
A parasite that costs us money needs to leave.
With my husband and in-laws saying such things, I realized there was no point in staying there any longer. Even if I didn't have a place to go, I could find a new home.
Fine. I'll move out.
I asked Mary to help me find a new place. She was more than happy to assist me. With everything available online, the process was surprisingly easy. Once all the paperwork was done, I handed Dustin the completed divorce papers.
Finally. You've made up your mind at last. But don't blame me for this. Just blame yourself for ending up like this.
Got it. Are you sure you're okay with me leaving?
Of course. I'm going to find a woman who's a better fit for me. In fact, everyone says I should do that.
Will you be able to manage financially?
Don't worry about that. Dad's retirement fund is still there, and Mandy got a big settlement from her ex-husband. We're set for now, so we don't need you.
All right, I see. Then, do as you please.
It was clear Dustin didn't understand the reality of his situation, but I didn't bother pointing that out, leaving the house without looking back. Mary continued to help me at my new place. In fact, she used to work energetically at a major firm, with an amazing skill of using computers. Even so, she decided to quit when she got married, because the constant competition had worn her out.
That was over 20 years ago.
Mary joked around, but her strong and assertive attitude toward my in-laws probably came from her career experience. She wasn't just a housekeeper anymore, managing my work as well. She was happy to help out, which was a great help. The new apartment I moved to was wheelchair accessible, which made it easy for me to get around on my own. The kitchen was spacious enough that I could even cook for myself again. As I started adjusting to my new life, Lucy began calling me incessantly, leaving a flood of messages. Since I had nothing left to say to her, I ignored her calls completely. With Mary's help and the peaceful working environment without constant insults from my in-laws, I became much more productive, my workload increased, and I simply didn't have time to deal with Lucy. A year passed since then. While her calls had become less frequent, Lucy still tried to reach out occasionally. Since my life had finally settled down, I decided it was time to deal with her calls and answered the phone.
Hello?
You finally answered. Why were you ignoring me? I was, worried that something might have happened to you.
Lucy said so, suddenly adopting a syrupy sweet tone. When we lived together, she had never once expressed any concern for me. I could easily guess why she was calling. She must have gotten herself into a tough spot. I wondered how they'd been living over the past year.
Thank you for your concern. I'm doing great and living comfortably, so no need to worry.
Oh, well, that's good. By the way,
Yes?
do you think we could, live together again like before?
Excuse me? Why would you want to live with someone like me, a bulky trash and a parasite?
I've been thinking a lot after you left. I realized I can't just leave someone with your condition to fend for yourself. From now on, we'll take care of you, so you don't need to worry.
No need to that. No problem with living alone. My helper and housekeeper continue to help me with everything, like cleaning, laundry, and groceries. On top of that, Mary even assists me with work.
Well, speaking of your work, is it true you were making more money than Dustin?
That's right. Though, I guess Dustin forgot about that when we were about to divorce.
He mentioned you were earning nearly $10,000 a month.
In fact, my income had been covering the household expenses back then. When my condition first worsened, my in-laws did help me a little, and Dustin's company was struggling, leading to a pay cut. Even so, luckily, my earnings had been increasing. That's why I had offered to help. At first, Dustin repeatedly said things like,
I appreciate it.
and acted grateful. He even asked me not to tell his parents about his pay cut to avoid worrying them, so I kept quiet. Nevertheless, after almost 3 years of that arrangement, he seemed to forget that I was the one supporting the household. When we divorced, I thought about pointing out his financial situation but decided against that. Furthermore, I knew the real reason Mandy got divorced. That was due to her affair, not her ex-husband's. In fact, her ex-husband had reached out to me. According to him, Mandy had taken money from him without permission. She had lied that she had received the money as alimony. She claimed that was a settlement, but he was determined to get the money back. That's why I decided to finalize my divorce before my in-laws found out about that. When I told Lucy all about that, she was speechless for a moment.
Actually, Dustin had racked up debt because he was obsessed with some girl from a nightclub.
Probably that's why he wanted a divorce, right? Maybe he thought he could rely on her earnings.
Of course not. He wasn't even dating her. He was only one of many customers for her.
I figured as much.
Rachel, did you already know about all this?
Yes, I knew everything.
Why didn't you tell me? Did you know about Dustin's company struggling too?
Of course, I did.
You knew everything, and you kept all that to yourself? That's awful.
She then revealed that Mandy had run off with her affair partner, only to be abandoned and saddled with debt, and she'd returned home crying. As for Dustin, because his company had gone bankrupt 6 months ago, he'd been unemployed ever since. Apparently, he'd been job hunting but kept claiming that nothing suited him. Thus, he was just another shut-in.
With those two living here, my husband's retirement fund is completely gone. We're even in debt now.
I see.
So if you come back, everything will be solved.
That makes absolutely no sense.
I truly couldn't understand what she thought would be solved. More than that, I couldn't believe she dared to ask me to return after how they'd treated me. I also couldn't believe how much things had fallen apart for them in just 1 year.
Things changed faster than I thought.
Dustin probably never imagined his company would actually go bankrupt. That didn't surprise me because I knew how careless he was.
If we'd known, We never would have let him divorce you.
Even though Lucy said so, while crying over the phone, that was just too late. Moreover, all she talked about was money. Her concern was solely for their own livelihood. Mandy was apparently refusing to work, staying at home all day eating and sleeping, and had gained a significant amount of weight.
Well, we sold the house to pay off their debts.
The old house wasn't worth much. Due to its age, poor location, and the costs of demolishing, they didn't get much money from the sale. Now, the four of them are living in a tiny, cheap apartment and struggling to make ends meet. Lucy and her husband are working multiple part-time jobs from morning till night, completely exhausted. Lucy sobbed over the phone.
This wouldn't have happened if you just answered my calls. If only we'd talked before selling the house.
In that case, what would that have changed?
Well, you would have helped us, of course. You used to live in that house, so it must mean a lot to you, right?
It means absolutely nothing to me.
What did you say?
I was stunned at how self-serving her thinking was. Looking back, I was glad I hadn't answered her calls sooner. Though, I'd never have agreed to help anyway.
Oh, so now Dustin and Mandy are just freeloading off of you, huh?
That's why I'm begging you. Just come back. You're the only one we can rely on now.
I'm afraid I'm just a stranger to you all. I'm not someone you can rely on.
Don't say that. We were wrong before, and I'll apologize. Oh, I have an idea. How about using your money to buy a new, wheelchair-accessible house where we can all live happily together?
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My head started to ache. It was time to give her my final answer.
I'm sorry, but I refuse. Actually, the reason I answered your call today is to tell you something.
What is it?
From now on, I will sever my ties with all of you.
I firmly declared so and hung up. Later, I was offered a chance to illustrate a picture book. It's a step closer to my dream of becoming a picture book author. Despite everything that's happened, I'm determined to keep moving forward, stay strong, and live my life positively and resiliently.